Good morning, Pastor Will here for June 28th, 2020, with a message from the book of Acts, chapter 21, the first 7 verses. This is from Paul's perspective. When we had parted from them and set sail, we came by a straight course to Kos, and the next day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. When we found a ship bound for Phoenicia, we went on board and set sail. We came in sight of Cyprus, and leaving it on our left, we sailed to Syria and landed, because the ship was to unload its cargo there. We looked up the disciples and stayed there for 7 days. Through the Spirit, they told Paul not to go on to Jerusalem. When our days there were ended, we left and proceeded on our journey, and all of them, with wives and children, escorted us outside the city. There we knelt down on the beach and prayed and said farewell to one another. Then we went on board the ship, and they returned home. May God bless this reading and this interpretation. I apologize if you hear gunfire. One of my neighbors apparently is shooting something. Hopefully he won't fire what I think is a cannon. I've heard 3 blasts today. I don't know what it is. I hope it's a cannon and not just random explosives. But anyway, we'll get through it. Some years ago, Jennifer and I went on a cruise to the Caribbean, and we had a great trip. There were several ports of call. The reason I chose this particular cruise is because one of the ports of call was in Cozumel. And years earlier, I had been to Cozumel and seen something magnificent, just something incredible, just beyond belief. And what it was I was in a shop, and they had a lot of sterling silver. And as I walked around, I just could not believe what I saw, a sterling silver armadillo punch bowl. It's beyond imagination, this armadillo punch bowl. This armadillo punch bowl was like, it had an armadillo on its back with its paws or its claws, whatever you call them, its feet up like that. And the belly of the beast was where you get the punch. And it had a big, ladle that was silver. And then the tail of the adult armadillo wrapped around the top edge of the punch bowl. And then these little cups that were baby armadillos the same way, with their tails were the cup handles, and they'd come down and not completely close because they'd hook over the tail of the big mama armadillo. It sounds quite hideous, actually, when you try to describe it, but it was beautiful. It's just really beautiful, beyond my abilities to properly describe, but just very well detailed, and remember, all silvery, didn't look like an armadillo. It didn't look like that armadillo cake on Sweet Home Alabama, the movie. I grew up with armadillos, and I don't like armadillos, honestly. I happen to know a lot about armadillos. They can swim, but they can also just hold their breath, like if they're walking under a river. They'll just hold their breath and walk on the bottom and come to the other side. Things like that. They carry leprosy. I've actually eaten armadillo that someone prepared for our family once as a joke. It really wasn't that funny of a joke. But anyway, armadillo punch bowl. I wanted it. In my mind, I was imagining these parties and inviting these, snobby people in the community, and they come up to the punch bowl, and then they would just be like, oh my God, just aghast at how horrible it was that it was an armadillo punch bowl, but secretly jealous, because that's how people are, right? And I wanted this armadillo punch bowl, but it was very expensive. It was several $1,000s. Yeah. But I kept lingering around it. I kept coming back to it. I'd look at some other trinkets, and I'd come back to the armadillo punch bowl. And one of the salespeople noticed me coming back and looking at the punch bowl and lingering around, and they started saying, with the rates today, U.S. dollar versus the peso or whatever, you can get this for a really good deal. It won't be that much money. It won't be $3,000. And I said, oh, really? And so then the haggling began. And eventually we came down to a price that was well less than $1,000, and I could easily have afforded it. And I really wanted it, but I didn't get it because I just couldn't quite justify it with myself, Just didn't seem right to spend that much money just on myself, just because I wanted it. And so I told the salesperson, let me think about it, and I'll come back this afternoon, and maybe I'll get it then. And she said, okay. And I left, and I never went back. I never got the Armadillo Punch Bowl. And then I got back to Georgia, and I kept thinking about that Armadillo Punch Bowl, and I regretted that I didn't get it. It was really a nice thing. It would have been nice to have around. I could have used it not just to serve punch at parties. I could have used it maybe to brush my teeth, or I don't know, a dog dish even. There are many uses it could have been used for. And I kept just thinking, well, maybe I can find it on the internet. And I looked on the internet, and in all of my searches online, I've never found it. Never. And I've looked many times. Every few years, I'll say, maybe this will be the day. And I'll look it up. No. And I regretted it, not buying that Armadillo Punch Bowl. So when Jennifer and I took this cruise, I made sure we would have a port of call in Cozumel, and I was going to get that Armadillo Punch Bowl because I knew right where to go. I knew where it would be. But as it happened, our ship encountered a storm with gale force winds. This is my first encounter with gale force winds. It was before I had moved to Minnesota and driven up to the North Shore during the gales of November. And so I wanted to feel what gale force winds felt like. So I went up to the top deck, and it was amazing. The wind was blowing so hard that I could lean back, just let myself fall back, and the wind would keep me from falling and hitting the deck. It was pretty windy. So that was that night, and then we were supposed to dock in Cozumel early the next morning, and ship's captain came on and said, we're not going to be docking. I don't think it's safe for the crew or the passengers of the ship for us to attempt to dock in these high seas, these high waves. And so, I mean, the waves are powerful. When they'd hit the ship would shudder. So we didn't stop in Cozumel. At best, I got to just watch it slide by on the starboard side as we kept going. And I missed out on another opportunity for the Armadillo Punch Bowl. But later in the cruise, we stopped in Jamaica. And we hired a driver to take us to what we thought would be the non-tourist areas, not the areas around the coast that were just all built up for the tourists, but into the jungle, into the mountains, and meet the real Jamaicans, we thought. But after a while, we realized the driver must have taken many tourists to meet these real Jamaicans, because they had all kind of things to sell tourists just out in the middle of the jungle, as if that many people were going to walk by. And they had fruit stands set up, or little stands to sell jewelry. We saw one guy who we actually went to his house, and he would swallow fire and swords, and you give him a tip, you give him $1 or something. I had made a mistake of not preparing for this little trip into the jungle, and did not have any small bills, 1s or 5s or even 10s. All I had were 20s and 100s. And so, what could I buy? What could I do? How could I help out the people? Sure, I wanted to help them out, but I didn't want to give away all of my money. What was I going to do? Anyway, telling too much about myself. There were these people who were on stilts, like the stilts were 10 feet tall, and the people would be dressed in leaves and foliage from the jungle. So they blended in. They would be standing in the trees, and they'd walk out, and you realize that's a man dressed as a tree. And you could have your picture taken with them for like $1, things like that. They were magnificent, flowers on them and all kind of things. It was really neat. So we'd drive around, and our driver would stop and introduce us to these people. And sometimes they could get, $1 or something, and sometimes not. But anyway, before we headed out on this cruise, we asked our sons, what would you like us to bring back from the cruise? And all of them but one said, well, how about a t-shirt? They all, t-shirt's pretty typical. But one of them, I think he was being a smart aleck, actually. He said it's because he's musically inclined and all that, but I have my doubts. He said he wanted maracas. Maracas. I'd like you to bring me some maracas from your trip in the Caribbean. Like, that's going to happen? Maracas, really? That's the best you could come up with, maracas? We can't find maracas. But that's what he wanted. So as we're driving around the backcountry of this jungle in the mountains of Jamaica, the driver stops by these two women he apparently knew. One woman was in her 30s, and she was dressed in the contemporary fashion, flip-flop shorts and a shirt or blouse. But the other woman, she was dressed like a Jedi Knight or a druid something like that. She had on a robe with a hood covering every bit of her body except for her feet, where you could see sandals, and her face. You could see her face. And she looked to be about 20 or 30 years older than God. She was ancient. And we were talking to the two women, and the younger woman said that she showed us some jewelry she had to sell. These just different things of jewelry. And the older woman just stood there, and I felt kind of sorry for her just standing there. So I asked her, I said, well, ma'am, do you have anything to sell? And she, at this point, like a magician pulling things out of his sleeves, or a wizard, or a Jedi Knight pulling the lightsaber hidden in its sleeves, she pulled out these two maracas. Imagine, ma'am, do you have anything to sell? Maracas. What was the likelihood of being in the jungle in the middle of the ocean and finding a woman who has maracas to sell? Well, I could not take my eyes off of those maracas, and they weren't cheap Party City plastic maracas. These were like handmade maracas. They looked very nice. They were big. And I was like a cobra watching the flute or something. I could not take my eyes off of these maracas, and I was like, yes, Austin, yes, you're going to get your damn maracas. So I asked her, I was worried I wouldn't have enough money, or I wouldn't have the right denominations, the right bills. You know, if it was more than $20, and what if it was $30, $35, what was I going to do? I'd give her two 20s? I knew she wouldn't have change. What was I going to do? And I worried about that. And so I said, how much? And she held up the maracas, one in each hand, and she said, $10. And in that moment, I recognized an opportunity. An opportunity, $10 for two maracas. And all I had was 20s and 100s. What was I going to do? So what I said to her, the opportunity I recognized was, here was a poor woman, for some reason, selling these maracas. And she wanted $10 for both of them. And I said to her, $10? Surely you mean $10 a piece? And she hesitated just briefly and her eyes lit up, and she said, yes, $10 a piece. So I said, $20 will be for two maracas, correct? And she said, yes, sir. And I gave her the $20. And I got the maracas. And when we got home, we gave those maracas to Austin. I don't think he was as impressed as I was that we were able to find him maracas. Wonder if he still has them. We parted ways, that old woman and Jennifer and I. I was happy to find some maracas for our Smart Aleck son way out in the jungles of nowhere. And I was happy to have been able to help a poor woman, and she was happy to have made a good deal more money from some ignorant rich American. Now, some months ago, I spoke on this Acts 21 text. It's one of my favorite biblical texts. And it's a favorite because it shows how beautiful the church is when it's being the church that it's called to be. Paul and his entourage are traveling when they stop for 7 days. They stop their journey and wait for 7 days for another ship to come, or for that ship to be unloaded and be ready. I don't know. I don't think their ships were that big, so it wouldn't have taken that long to unload. But they're there for 7 days. And while they're stopped, Paul decides to look up other Jesus followers in the area, and he finds some, and they spend the week together. And while visiting with them, these other people, these other Jesus disciples, these other Jesus followers, share with Paul that the Spirit of God shared with them that they should share with Paul that he shouldn't continue his journey to Jerusalem because it would not end well for him. And that's what they do. And they spend the week together, and they share their insights about God with one another, and they take care of each other, and they pray for one another, and then they part ways, and they each continue on their own journey. Paul and his group on the ship, the disciples and their families walk back home. In these few verses, we see how the church looks out for each other. This is one of the greatest blessings of the church, looking out for one another, caring for one another, taking opportunity to care for one another when the opportunity arises, as we each seek to love each other and to share God's love and Christ's love with each other and with the world. the lesson that I learned from not buying that Armadillo Punch Bowl when I had the opportunity all those years ago is to always act on opportunity when it presents itself. Don't second guess. Don't wait for another chance. Don't wait for the price to go down or up. Don't wait. When opportunity presents itself, take it. You know, when I was in Cozumel, I missed the opportunity on the Punch Bowl, but when I was in Jamaica, I recognized another opportunity to show a woman that her life mattered. Even if it made me look foolish, so what? To show this woman, this poor woman, you know, somehow that God loves you, because your life matters and you're worth my haggling up to $20 instead of haggling down to $5. You know? This text is all about opportunity. It's about making opportunity and taking opportunity. For what? To encourage one another so that their journey is just a little bit better. To encourage and look out for one another so that our lives are improved. Today marks a year that I've been with Madrid United Methodist Church, and it's been an interesting year. And I admit, when I first arrived as your pastor, I did a lot of wondering. I wondered, what kind of people would you be? And I wondered, what would your interests be? And I wondered, what was your goal as the church? Was your goal just to care for your building and to be proud of your building? It's a beautiful building. Or was your goal more than that? Was your goal the greater community, or was it were your goals self-serving? And who did you care about? I wondered about these things, and I wondered if you would accept me and accept my message, the message of grace and love to a greater community and not just self-service. One of the things that really surprised me about Madrid was how graciously you received me and Jennifer. You'll never know how much your many kindnesses have meant to us, and we thank God for you. And you've made our journey better, and we count ourselves blessed to have you in our lives. Paul's stop on his journey presented him and other Jesus followers with the opportunity to look out for one another, and even if just a little bit, to encourage one another and make their lives better. You know, Paul recognized the opportunity he had in his travel being interrupted, if you will. He could have stayed to himself. He could have just checked into the hotel and had room service and stayed by the pool. But he didn't. He recognized an opportunity, and he got together with other people whose desire is to love God and to serve God. And they learned from one another, and they shared with one another, and they took care of each other, and they prayed for each other. This year, Madrid United Methodist Church has recognized an opportunity in our community. We have seen people who are hungry, people who are suffering and frightened, people without resources that they need just to live with dignity. And small as we are, literally just a handful of people, small as we are, you have not shied from this opportunity to take care of other people as best as you can. And I'm very proud of you for that, and I'm proud to be a part of that. You do more as a church than congregations of much, much, much larger size. And I attribute all of that to your grace. You're the most gracious church I've ever known. You're just gracious and forgiving and loving. Oh, you struggle. I see your struggles. I'm with you on some of those struggles. Our worries, our concerns, the way some people treat us, these could all be excuses to stop being gracious. These could be excuses to worry about being taken advantage of. These could be excuses to retreat into ourselves and just take care of one another. But you've not given in to any of these excuses. If anything, you've become even more gracious and more giving in the community. And I commend you for that. And I'm very proud to be a part of that. And the community is responding to that and joining us in our mission to love one another. And that's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing to see. And I know you get discouraged sometimes, but I want you to know what an inspiration you are to me, and I know to others. The gospel is very simple. Treat all of creation with respect. And the way we do that is by loving God. And the way we love God is by treating all of creation with respect. And the way we do that, I know I keep talking in riddles. The way we treat people in creation, animals, birds, the seas, the oceans, the skies, the way we treat creation with respect, and the way we love God is to love creation like God loves us, even when it doesn't make sense, unconditionally, irrationally, to adore creation as God adores each of us. So this text just today reminds me of what it means to be the church and to take care of one another and to pray for one another. And when we part, to do so having been made better because of the care of the other person for us. I thank God for each of you, and I'm excited to see what God has for us in this new year. Peace be with you.